If you're a shy introvert who wants to be a social magnet, there are 3 steps to get anyone to absolutely adore you. I used to be super scared to talk to anyone new, and now I can confidently talk to someone and be seen as super charismatic. The first step is so simple, yet it can be so difficult for so many of us to do. And let me explain. When I was 19, I moved from my hometown to Florida and I had no friends there. In order to make friends, I had to go out places where I'd never been before, being that I left school, I wasn't in college, I had no easy places to meet people. And eventually, after months of having no friends and no social life, I decided to try out an 18 plus social club. It was like a nightclub, but they let in 18 plus on Thursdays. So I went to it, but the entire day leading up to it, I was absolutely panicking about what I was gonna do there. I was going alone because I had no friends. So I was like, I'm gonna be seen as awkward. I had so many negative thoughts and self-limiting beliefs. But as soon as I got there, I just went up to the bar. I saw this kid sitting watching a game on the TV, and I just said, "Hey, what's up, bro?" And then we started talking. We became friends. We played some pool. Before you knew it, other people were playing pool with us. We started talking to girls. And this was back before I developed any of my social skills. And it was all because I had the courage. All that success came just because I had the courage to go and say hi to someone new. So this is the first step that most people struggle with. And it's something that you can even struggle with now to this day, even as an extroverted person who's very confident. I sometimes still have that resistance to go up and talk to someone new and cold approach them like a girl on the beach. But it's the first step that once you can break past that, you've done 90% of the work. At this point, everything else is on easy mode. Once you can have the courage to go and speak to someone, you're most likely going to have a positive interaction. 99% of my interactions that I've gone up and started have been very, very positive. So how do you actually start these? Well, it's very simple. I always just go with what is your name. It's the simple 3-word trick that's gonna allow you to get a conversation started with absolutely anyone. And now to preface this, I always start with excuse me, making sure I have the person who I wanna speak to's attention. Because if you start off and you're like, what's your name? And someone's like, what? And then you're kind of starting at a negative. You want to be like, excuse me. They're like, oh, what? And then you ask them the question once you have their attention. It's very important that you don't just go up and kind of start with that negative, because that's going to make your interactions a little worse. So make sure you get their attention first, saying, excuse me. Obviously, if they're making direct eye contact with you smiling, you don't need to do that. But that is the 3-word trick. And now another option that you have is an environmental question. So for example, I go to the bars and clubs a lot. And I'll just ask someone, be like, what do you think of this bar? And then they'll give me an answer and be like, oh, any other good spots that you recommend around here? Very simple small talk. And then I can throw in their like second, third question. Oh, by the way, what's your name? And then you introduce yourself. You can keep talking. You're from around the area, whatever it is. But those 2 openers are the genuine easiest things that you can do. Either asking them their name or an environmental question more based off of their thoughts and opinions. Don't go with like, what time does this bar close? That's gonna be pretty closed-ended after they tell you, and it's gonna be hard to keep it going unless they really like you. So those are the 2 easiest openers that you can do, and this is gonna do 90% of the work for you, allowing you to get your foot in the door and get the conversation going and see where it goes from there. This next step is where most people trip up, because if you find yourself in conversation running out of things to say and your conversation's always becoming awkward, you need to hear this. See, I always used to have that same issue, and that's also why I had that fear to go and talk to someone, because I didn't know what I was going to talk about once I got to that point. So I read How to Win Friends and Influence People at 19 after I went to that club at a little bit later at point in my life. Before going to Sweden, I was in a self-development phase. I read a bunch of books and a couple social skills books. And then I went to Sweden with this new information, this new knowledge, and I learned how easy it was to keep a conversation going. And I'm gonna tell you exactly what to do in just a minute, but let me tell you what happened when I learned. When I went out there, I started having conversations with ease because I had the courage. I built myself up as a man. I had built trust in my word. I was doing discipline acts. I was very proud of myself. So I went into interactions as the best version of myself, just going and introducing myself to people, having conversations. But now my conversations actually flowed. During this time, I absolutely cleaned up with girls and made so many friends. This was the first time in my life where I felt like I was a social success, having grown up as a shy introvert my entire life. It was so easy for me to make friends and talk to people, all because of the things I'm about to tell you. So what did I do that was so revolutionary? Well, it's so simple, it shouldn't even be revolutionary, but a lot of people struggle with this. See, people's favorite topic is themselves. You're always thinking about yourself, your goals, this girl, your friend, whatever it is, right? If you talk to people about themselves, they're absolutely gonna love you. That should be the main topic of conversation, is that person and the things going on in their life. There's nothing that you're gonna say that's gonna be more interesting than that own person's personal life and their experiences and all the things going on in their head. That's the topic you should be talking about. So how do I do this? Well, I told you in my intro, I usually go into some basic questions from there, kind of saying like, where are you from? Are you working? Are you in school? And then just continue the conversation however so it can go, right? You can take it with work or school and you can find out, what field they're studying, what do they want to do in the future, or if they're working, you can find out what they do for work, why do they choose that, and you keep it going with open-ended follow-up questions. So if you talk to the person about themselves and you follow it up with open-ended questions with genuine curiosity, the desire to actually get to know them and not just ask some basic questions, but you're coming from a place of curiosity where you're like, I really want to get to know this person. And that's going to make it so easy for you to actually formulate these questions. When you're in a conversation and you don't want to be there and you're only half listening, it's going to be so hard for you to ask intelligently formed, open-ended questions, where if you really, really wanted to get to know this person, those questions would come a lot more naturally, even if you weren't the best salesman or the best communicator. You're gonna naturally be able to just form these questions, because that's what happened for me. Everyone I was meeting, I had this genuine curiosity to try and get to know them. And these questions just sort of came. They weren't perfect, but they did more than enough for me to actually get to know everyone, be seen as charismatic, and make everyone really like me. So that is the next step, and it is so simple. If you just talk to people about themselves and follow up with open-ended questions, you'll be able to keep a conversation going forever. And this last aspect is the way to win the hearts and minds of everyone you speak to. And to give you an example of how to apply this, I want you to imagine that you were paid $1,000 to talk to this person. How do you think you would go into this interaction? Would you go in there kind of half-assing it, only listening a little bit? Or would you just be so excited to be talking to them? Would you be listening with your full attention? Would you just be being constantly positive, encouraging them to speak? Would you be negative and down and kind of depressed? Of course not. That's not how you would act if you got paid $1,000 to talk to someone. And this is how you should come into every single one of your interactions. Ignore the financial part of it, but think about if you received so much to talk to someone. You want to come from that place of giving. Like, you've received so much, and now you just want to give and give and give. And what are the things that you give? You give your attention, you give your positivity, you give your optimism, you encourage people, encourage their dreams, allow them to speak freely, and don't judge or be negative. If you do those things, to put it kind of plainly, I read this book on charm where it had like the 5 A's, and it was like appreciation, all these different things, but the way I said it is a lot more simpler to understand. It's like, just be positive, encourage them to speak, all those things, and then don't be negative, don't be judgmental, don't be trying to start arguments or prove your opinion or your viewpoint. If you just don't do those simple things, you'll have so much more success. See, a lot of people, where they trip up now at this point in the conversation is they feel like they have to talk about their opinions, their viewpoints, and their beliefs and defend them. Where when I came into this new phase of my life, after having learned so much on self-development, when I went to Sweden that time, I had no ego. That was the thing, was I was just here, like I said, to genuinely get to know people. And all the time, they were anti-Trump or something, and I was just neutral. I was like, oh yeah, that's very interesting. Why do you feel that way? And then they would try and ask me, and they give me I just want what's best for the whole world. Or you just say something like that, and you can just kind of deflect it. If people are trying to ask your opinion on a controversial subject, you just deflect it, and you encourage them to speak and be like, oh, interesting. Why do you feel that way, right? And then you get them talking, and you be like, oh, that's a very interesting point. But you're not saying it in a negative way or judgmental and like, that's not right, or that's wrong, or you didn't look at this evidence, or this or that. They don't care. People only care about their opinions, their beliefs. You're not going to convince someone out of their opinions and beliefs. If I believe, which I do, in holistic self-improvement to build yourself up as a man, to build your confidence, you coming to me and trying to convince me that being a degenerate is the best way to build your confidence is not gonna ever convince me. I'm never gonna listen to your viewpoint. I'll listen to it, but I'm never going to accept it. and we're probably not gonna leave this conversation on a good basis. I'm not gonna wanna hang out with you. I'm not gonna wanna be your friend. I'm probably just gonna leave with a bad taste in my mouth. And this is the same way that a lot of people leave conversations because of how they feel they need to interject their opinions, their beliefs, their mindset. Where during this phase of my life, I learned that if you just let people speak their mind, encourage them, you don't put any judgment, you don't put any negativity or any of the things that you believe into it, even if it's opposing, you just let them speak their mind and encourage it and let them keep going, and whatever it is, then you just will win. You will win the conversation. You'll win by being the person that everyone likes. But if you feel like you have to win these conversations and have an ego in it, it's just gonna go bad for you. So you gotta think, would you rather win in the sense of making people like you, having many friends, or would you rather be right, which is just right in your own viewpoint, and make people dislike you and have less friends? So the choice is yours, but that is how you'll win the hearts and minds of people. And I feel like this is something that a lot of people are messing up on. And this is where a lot of people go wrong in trying to make people adore them and like them, is if they start really trying to interject their viewpoints, their judgments, their beliefs, and if it's counteracting other people's. So if it's in alignment, 100%, bring it in and tell people how you're very similar to them, build that rapport. But if it's opposing, it's not necessary. You just gotta think, is this worth the argument and losing a friend and losing someone who likes me? Or is it worth defending my opinion, which no one cares about anyway? So that's kind of how you can go into this, and this is really gonna do so much for you. And now, if you need help getting the girl of your dreams, I will help you attract the girl of your dreams by becoming the ultimate man in the next 3 months. If that's of interest, book a free coaching call with me down below.